Hello students, and now we're looking at ancient Greece, in particular the architecture. And so here we have what's called the column orders, which you see evolved throughout ancient Greece. So the first one, the most simple, is the Doric. It's more squat. It's what you would have seen like on the Parthenon, actually, and the Temple of Hera, I believe, in Olympia. And then you have the scrolls at the top, like the paper scroll style. That would come out of Turkey, what's now known as Ionia, and it essentially let's see, we're looking at the 6th century versus the 7th century for the Doric. Finally, the Corinthian is going to be the flowery one at the top of this page, and that one has 3 tiers usually. And so it would be the 5th century, and it would be like Apollo Epicurus at Bessay would be an example of that, where one of those are at. So usually it's the one that changes the most. Callimachus, I believe, is the sculptor that is credited with coming up with it. So what I'd recommend is try the column orders, just the tops, what we call the capitals. The shaft, is something that you could do on the final draft. So go ahead and start by just marking out some squares, and you can just practice the heads in here. I mean, obviously you can use a ruler. I don't know if it's necessary for the practice. Please reference, you can reference slideshow, you could reference handouts. This handout I think is really great because it actually shows you 2 or 3 different types of each capital. So essentially, while I'm drawing this, which is a series of rectangles that you can round off, that's the Doric. The final draft is a good pencil drawing, right? It's just graphite pencil and a ruler. And basically you'll have 3 orders and then an original. But here we go. You have the different drawing techniques we can talk about. So blending, overlapping certain drawing techniques. You have blending, you have stippling, creates a great texture or surface quality. And you can use hatching, cross-hatching, and use multiple ones, right? Think of shadow, think of modeling. And then basically that is our Doric, again, the most simple, the earliest. I think the Temple of Hera is another example besides the Parthenon. So, I mean, a lot of, 7th century BC, is what we're looking at. And then the Ionic would be 6th century BC, and then the Corinthian's about 5th century BC. So should kind of give us an idea of what we're dealing with. Don't forget that there are ridges carved into each of these capital shafts. They're usually rounded at the top. So this is a great lesson in modeling, refinement, and building up the layers of a complex form. I'm doing a little bit of shading, just doing some hatching or very close hatching, parallel lines kind of together back and forth, which really looks more like the blending technique. Now you can actually use cotton swab applicators or Q-tips, those blending stumps, and you can actually create several different versions of shading. The Ionic, of course, like I said, it's a balanced 2-scroll tier with some shading. And then the Corinthian is going to be the most difficult, where it's still very symmetrical. It's balanced on each side. Here I'm trying to do an original design, so I'm thinking of like a bug, like a 2-headed bug. One bug head is at the bottom end, and the one bug end is at the top. So when you're using your 12 by 18 inch piece of paper, you're going to have to measure out 4 equidistant sections, so that is about 4.5 inches a piece, right? Extra credit can be given to people who are not doing just the capital and the shaft, but not just the base. The base is included in the typical grade, but adding in the frieze or the building details on top. So here I'm like using boxes, I'm using the median line, keeping a sharp pencil, and I am putting the bases in, and I am definitely going to try my best to do a very nice job of the modeling and the shading. So you start with rougher shading. Now in this demo, I'm not sitting there with the blending applicators, but I am going to try to get everything mapped out well. So there's symmetry here. So there's a median line going all the way down through the shaft, and there's 3 levels, 3 tiers. And so the more grid you give yourself, the more accurate it is going to be. Then it requires more shading, so I am doing hatching essentially on all pages. Excuse me, all ridges. I actually have seen the Parthenon. It's crazy. So many people have walked on the marble going up there, and it's just a little rope that holds it. So, the railing is not a real rail. And I'm going to tell you, so many feet have walked up there to the Acropolis, right, of that Athens, Greece. So many so that it's actually polished and you don't have good traction on your shoes. I was actually slipping. So it's just time consuming and patient exercise here. Here's some blenders so that you can kind of see them. They come in these bags, and I try to keep them in stock. So if you need to get some, you can come up and grab them. They're slightly different size shafts. As you can see, the Doric is the thickest, the Ionic is the thinnest, and there is a bit of a bow, and so they're not necessarily all straight up and down. But I'm referring to my examples, references, and my drawing, and then I need to start working on the original here soon after I get the shading done and completed. For this video, you can see this is time-lapsed. I had to help several students get things done, so forgive me for when it takes too long. Here I'm mapping out a slightly different version of it, a 2-headed roach. I'm making this look more like a Siamese twin, so there's 2 heads, interlocking antennas and feet. And don't forget to keep blending your drawing techniques. Keep layering. You can use a piece of paper like I'm doing here to keep your drawing from smearing. So if you're going up and down or back and forth with your pencil, having that paper in between the drawing paper and your hand is a great thing to keep it from smearing. And there you go.